Welcome in, everyone, to Flyover Footy late night edition, still technically streaming on a Sunday. My name is Matt Baker, here with you for however long we end up doing this, for the fallout to the 3-1 St. Louis City win. I promised that I would be going live right after the press conference. And true to my word, right after the press conference, I clicked the live button. So we don't have Santiago here yet. Santi will be joining me here momentarily when he finishes up his duties on the Spanish broadcast. So stay tuned for Santi. And until then, you've just got me waxing poetic about this game because I think this game it took everybody by surprise how quickly it started because it was the promise that we had wanted to see for so long from St. Louis. Not just the back-to-back, not just the Brendan McSorley performance, which is absolutely out of this world, but it's consistency in the balance that Critchley had talked about. All the pieces continued to fall into place. It is not beating a team that we should beat like last week, but it's beating a team that's fighting for the playoffs. There's so much to dive into on this game, but I mean, probably until Santi gets here, I'm more than happy just talking about Brendan McSorley and his performance. We'll get to it in the pod recording here shortly, but I'm officially on Brendan McSorley as MLS Player of the Match Week team. I think he's earned it. I believe I saw Lionel Messi had 2 goals and an assist as well. So first of all, we're talking about Brendan McSorley in the same conversation as Lionel Messi. I think that's something right there that we have to just stop and appreciate. But beyond that, Brendan McSorley had a goal line clearance. Brendan McSorley saved this game after he won this game, alongside Roman Berkey, obviously. But just a tremendous, tremendous performance by our 3rd round super draft pick from a couple of years ago. And I think that he earns every bit of accolades for this one. Brendan McSorley and Roman Berkey both deserve to be on the team of the match week. I'll say that for sure. Berkey had, I believe the stats were 9 saves, 6 diving saves. Depending on the stats that you look at, where MLS's website had, I think, 4.8 XG for San Jose. FotMob had them at like 3.8 or 3.9. Berkey had about 3 goals saved by the metrics. I mean, that's tremendous for any goalkeeper. So Berkey, I said at one point that Brendan McSorley should have the man of the match day locked in, and then Berkey has his performance to end the game. 81 minutes or so, whatever it was, 78, 81, where he had those 2 saves within a minute. One of them was that diving save to his right. Absolutely incredible performance. But end of the day, I voted Brendan McSorley, and I will do it again all day for that. 22 touches, and 4 of them are impacting the game. I talked to him just a couple of minutes ago post-game and asked him about that. And the quotes I've got as part of our show, we'll get to in a little bit. But he was all smiles. So if you haven't watched that post-game press conference, when I'm not sure if it was live even, because I don't think they go live for the away games, but when that's posted, check it out. The smiles, the joy, the jubilation on his face, that could feed families. That was just so infectious to see him so excited and so happy. He started by saying how tired he was and that he hasn't even had a chance to call his parents yet, if that's kind of telling you where his mind is. And I definitely agree with Doc here in the chat. Yeah, but McSorley plays McSorley plays defense better than the GOAT. And can't disagree with that at all. Regardless of Messi's performance, I'm voting McSorley on this one. And I'm probably going to vote Hartle for goal of the match week. I would be shocked if Hartle's goal doesn't make MLS team of the match week, or MLS goal of the match day, I should say. Sorry, trying to get Santi in here, see if he's ready. Otherwise, I might just start the pod recording so that everybody's not up past 1 a.m. if you're sticking with us. And if you are, you guys are the diehard City fans. If you're tuning in to Flyover Footy after dark, Flyover Footy at midnight, 12:18 right now as we're streaming this, then you are one of the City diehards. I can officially say that. And if you have any questions, drop them in the chat because yeah, I am excited to get to them. But I think we might get going here with the pod recording, and Santi will join as he's able to, and then we'll pick up with what he has to say because, it's late and I appreciate your guys' time, but I'm not going to overstay my welcome here. All right. Welcome everyone to Flyover Footy. My name is Matt Baker. Thank you so much for joining us on this look at the 3-1 St. Louis City victory over the San Jose Earthquake. It is the Brendan McSorley show, the Brendan McSorley appreciation episode, the David Critchley appreciation episode. Brendan McSorley with the man of the match day performance to end all performances in his first MLS start. He comes out of the gate with 2 goals, 1 assist, and a goal line save. Absolutely insane work by the young lad from City 2 who just earned his contract. Roman Berkey, standout performance. Marcel Hartl, standout performance. I'm not going to bury the lead on this one. I'm just going to go ahead and say that David Critchley is 2-0 against Bruce Arena. That's what we need to know right now. St. Louis is 6-0 all time against San Jose after this match. St. Louis picks up 3 points. They are on, I would say, on relative fire compared to where they usually are. And all we need to really know is that it's all coming together for David Critchley's side. It's all coming together for the St. Louis City team at a time that I think as fans, we all want to say, why couldn't we do this earlier? And we know the journey this team has been on all season. We know the battle that they've had, the ups and downs, ebbs and flows, but it really does feel like this is all coming together for this side right now against a 2-0 performance last week against Montreal, a 3-1 performance against San Jose, first back-to-back wins. Actually, from what I said on Flyover a couple of days ago, I do believe this is the first time since maybe ever that we've had back-to-back away wins, but definitely first time since we've had back-to-back away wins since the beginning of 2023. That's what it was. So this has been a long time coming for a relatively long-suffering team in St. Louis City. And before we get to our starting 11, I'm going to welcome in Santiago Beltran because, like I said, if you're listening to this on Monday or Tuesday or even Sunday, just know that this is a rare post-game edition of Flyover Footy's Fallout. And we're coming to you live right after, well, we're coming at you live right now after the post-game press conference. Santi is just wrapping up his work on the Spanish broadcast. So, Santi, welcome to the show.
Here we are. Thank you. And a happy Fallout. I think, as you were saying offline, we chose the right one to do this right after the game.
You know, our friend Tom Franklin, Soccer Zombie, he had made a post on social media earlier on Saturday, and it was related to the excitement and the lack thereof in the build up to this match. Didn't feel like there was a lot of excitement building, a lot of conversations, a lot of hashtags, a lot of discussion. And I mean, winning solves everything, right? This is probably the greatest example of winning solves everything because, as Byron Tim says in our chat, I feel way too euphoric for a 13th place team. And maybe that's part of it, is that if you look at the standings right now, with what happened in the Saturday games, we've jumped Sporting KC. We have not officially been eliminated from the playoffs as of the time of this live recording, Sunday morning at 12:22 a.m. now, but SKC has officially been eliminated. And that's something, it's not worth celebrating, but it's definitely something worth smiling about after this season that we've had so far. We will grab onto anything we can, and that's definitely one of them. St. Louis moves up into 13th place with this win, and it's probably saying that we haven't even gotten into the starting 11 yet. We're just kind of being excited about the moment. But are you feeling it? Are you feeling some like the excitement that we haven't felt in quite some time right now in this moment?
Yes, it's exciting to get back-to-back wins, but at the same time, yeah, I'm excited, but at the same time, like, yeah, you are not mathematically eliminated, but you need a lot of things to happen, and you start thinking, oh, where was all of this like 10 weeks ago? It's a little late, but yeah, that's like some good building blocks for 2026. It's exciting, but at the same time, and I hate to be a party pooper, like, who did you beat? Montreal, last place, like one of the worst teams in the league. And then a struggling San Jose. Like their last 10 games, they have lost 6, only won 2. And previously they were like in 7, 6 position, and now they are basically out. They are 11 if if the season ended today, they will be out of the playoffs.
Yeah, but you know who did that, Santi? That was us.
Oh, so
We
it's
did
all
that.
us. Well,
So
yeah, I guess we beat them twice. So
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, well, and I'm not going to let you bring me down on this one because maybe it's the endorphins going from the fact that I've been up for 17, 18 hours or something, and I need some sleep. But I do think that your measured response is a good balancing to my euphoric type of response right now, because I think we'll have time in the offseason to look at the big picture and what went wrong, what went right. But I do think that kind of what along the lines of what Winter 83 says in our chat, finishing above KC is what really matters. I know that's
No.
I know that's tongue in cheek, but where I would go with that is finishing matters. Finishing strong, finishing the season strong matters. And I've been a proponent earlier on in the season of you have to be careful when you're talking about why finishing a season strong is important. And it's not necessarily to carry momentum into the next season, because I think especially now we have far too many changes, far too many movement that'll be happening potentially on the head coaching job, definitely in the sporting director, definitely on the player front. Too much movement going on to really carry too much momentum as far as wins and losses go. But I think this match offers us a glimpse at what individual player momentum can offer, namely in Brendan McSorley. Getting Marcel Hartl right, getting that confidence built back up. Klaus, making sure that he's in good form. Some of the players that we know and we expect to be back and that we're going to be using as building blocks, like a Mackay Joyner, hopefully Brendan McSorley, making sure those guys are in the right mindsets and they're confident about their abilities and going into the offseason. This helps with that. On top of the fact that, I mentioned first back-to-back away wins since the beginning of 2023. David Critchley's first ever back-to-back wins. We've now picked up points in our last 3 games, 7 points in 3 games, 6 points in 2. These are numbers that shouldn't set the world on fire, but for a St. Louis City team that has massively suffered in 2025, these are numbers that we haven't actually seen or been able to talk about in quite a while. So yes, it is against a Montreal team that's been eliminated. It's against the San Jose team that we're hitting them maybe at the right time, and they've clearly been struggling. And we talked about their struggles in the past 9 or 10 games or so on Flyover last week. But you also need to use those games as measuring sticks. I think it's important to separate yourself from teams like that, where you can go into Montreal and they're bad enough that you should be seen as a head above them. You go into San Jose and you should be seen with their recent form as a head above them if you want to be considered a somewhat decent team. And I think Critchley's team is now turning into what they're capable of, and we're seeing the results that they're at least a somewhat decent team.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. You separate from those teams. I think the real test, and I hope it still matters next week. But I think a great test will be against LAFC, a team that it's fourth in the conference and may secure playoffs tomorrow if they beat Real Salt Lake and at the same time keep City alive. I think that would be a great test.
At the same time, keep City alive. That's the other thing, is depending on when you're listening to this, if you're listening live, then we have a Real Salt Lake LAFC rematch from 4 days ago to watch on Sunday night. But if you're listening to this or watching this after Sunday's 8 p.m. kickoff or on Monday or Tuesday, you might know a Real Salt Lake win will eliminate us from the playoffs officially. If not, then yeah, we get to carry our chances back to Energizer Park against LAFC and welcome in Son, welcome in Boanga, and that will be a massive, massive match, huge test. That would be a flip of it, where we're separating ourselves from these lesser teams, the teams on the downswing, and we come up against a potentially red hot LAFC. So we'll see what happens on Sunday night. But as much as I love the big picture waxing poetic talk, we should get into this game specifically and talk about it, because I think that's why everybody's still tuning in to the live stream anyway. And I'm sure if you're listening to this, you want to hear about the actual match again and maybe what some of our thoughts were. So let's start where we usually do, with our starting 11. It was Roman Berkey, Devin Padelford, Timo Baumgartel, Kyle Hebert, Conrad Vollum, Chris Durkin, Edu Leuven, Celio Pompeu, Marcel Hartl, Brendan McSorley, and Klaus. It was a 4-2-3-1. It was Kyle Hebert's first start since June 25th. It was Brendan McSorley's first ever start for City. And it was another match where we continued to see Tomas Ostrak, Thomas Totlin, and Simon Betcher all on the bench. We also saw Jaziel Orozco on the bench. That was a surprise, even though he didn't really feature. That was a really interesting move, considering he just played 90 minutes on Friday night for City 2. So he must have gotten out there quickly. But what do you think of this lineup? And at least try to separate what actually happened for now from your thoughts when you first saw this lineup. Because looking back on it, obviously Critchley's a genius for starting Brendan McSorley when he did. But we knew that Song Bin was out for personal reasons. He went back to South Korea. And that's all that we know, personal reasons. I don't think anybody wants to or needs to know anything more than that for privacy. And we know we were out Falou Fall and Henry Kessler. Falou Fall was sick with at least dehydration, stomach type issues all week. He missed training. Henry Kessler's a little bit more of a question mark on what exactly is going on, though I understand it to be more not re-aggravation, but not a new injury is at least what I understood by Critchley's comments, because he didn't go into much more during the week than load management, trying to make sure that he's strong and fit, and obviously he wasn't. But Marcel Hartl was, where Hartl missed practice on Thursday as well, managing a groin issue as we understand it now, and he was good to go for a majority of this match. So we were out Fall, we were out Kessler, we were out Song Bin, and in their places we had Timo Baumgartel, Kyle Hebert, and Brendan McSorley. What'd you make of that?
Well, I was surprised about seeing Kyle Hebert as the second center back, because as you mentioned, he had not started in a while, and after that last start, he only had a few minutes. And we were talking about the lineup, and even during the week, Michael Wenzel had been in training as a precautionary measure in case Falou Fall and Henry Kessler couldn't make it. So to me, maybe that was going to be the natural start, but in the end, it was Kyle Hebert. I was happy to see him back, because when you think about it, he started the first 15 games of the season, and then he started like he still started some under Critchley, but week by week he was relegated to the bench. There were a lot of games in which he wasn't featured. So to me, it was good to see him, but I was really surprised just because he had fell out of favor the last few weeks. And then Max Orley, also another surprise to me. I was actually thinking maybe if there was a surprise, could have been Joyner's first start, but in the end, it was Max Orley.
Yeah, the McSorley one is the one that really took me by surprise too. I put a poll out pre-game during the day on Saturday asking City fans, we feel Timo Baumgartel's a lock given Fall and Kessler are out, but who's the second center back? It's like the old NWO, who's the third man type of thing. So options being Michael Wenzel, Chris Durkin, Josh Yarrow, and Kyle Hebert. I feel confident that those are our, with Jaziel Orozco having played for City too. That's the big thing about this too. I feel those are our next four options, and they're pretty obvious that there are next are only four. Kyle Hebert actually had the most amount of votes from those who participated in the poll. 39% of the 250 plus votes went to Kyle Hebert. Michael Wenzel was next, and I wonder if we kind of poisoned the well of sorts in that one by putting him in our consensus projection, but it was based off of him being at training. It was trying to use the data that we had to say, okay, we know we're trending towards no Fall or Kessler, so you bring in Michael Wenzel, that might mean something. And also, you've seen Kyle Hebert and you haven't seen him for so long. You haven't seen Josh Yarrow for so long. That should tell you something. And so why not give Michael Wenzel a chance? But it didn't end up being that. And Critchley's comments on Kyle Hebert, and I'm going to try to sprinkle some Critchley comments throughout this because the press conference just happened. But on Kyle Hebert, he really talked about how Hebert just shows up every day. He stays prepared and is ready to go so that when his chance is given, he's fully ready for the opportunity. He's just that guy who's not just happy to be here, but he's always showing up. He's always putting in the work. He's never complaining. He's always doing what he needs to, staying prepared. And finally, his number was called for the first time since June 25th. And it's that, I think that just goes to show you can't always read as much into the here and now when it comes down to the nitty gritty. Like if you're down your top two starters and you need somebody consistent, a guy like Kyle Hebert, is always ready to go. And so the interesting thing is just the fact that you went that route where you haven't favored Kyle Hebert in quite a while, versus Michael Wenzel. Michael Wenzel, who I just don't know. He's a kind of player right now that I just don't know if his option will be picked up, because in this moment where you could use him and you haven't seen him, you don't really know what you have very much with him. You go with a more known commodity in Kyle Hiebert. And it obviously paid off. Hiebert did fine. He had a good match alongside Timo Baumgartel. But it just is a little bit of an indictment on Michael Wenzel, in my opinion, here.
Yeah, and he wasn't even on the bench. So I don't know if maybe, and I
Where
don't know.
Orozco was.
So it could be maybe in the end something happened to Michael Wenzel
Could be
yesterday, and they had to bring Orozco as an emergency. I don't know, but yeah, to me it was odd to see Orozco and not even Michael Wenzel on the bench.
And you had you still didn't have Mekhi Joyner starting, but Mekhi Joyner made a massive appearance, and he had a good run out in the second half. So we'll get to that in a minute. But shifting over to some of the big things that we saw in this match that were really positive, and there's a long list of positive things. So if I leave anything out, Santi, you go in whatever direction you want to. But to me, the positives, they got to go back to Brendan McSorley, man of the match, 2 goals, 1 assist, 1 goal line clearance. He was always making the runs. He was always pushing ahead. The spacing was intelligent. He played off of Klaus well. I think a lot of the movement that we had in the final third was credited to Brendan McSorley, even if he didn't have touches on the ball because of the spacing he was occupying. Klaus was all over the place. Klaus was moving every which way in the final third, always tracking that ball, always going after it, holding it up and playing it, willingly playing it for others. And Brendan McSorley was just taking whatever space he could take off of Klaus. So he was my obvious man of the match. But other guys in this that I think, well, we can talk about the stats in a little bit, but early on, it was Chris Durkin, who was just keeping the ball in the final third, making some of those really important crosses. He had the 2 hockey assists in that first half. I think this spoke to me on why Durkin and Leuven work well in the midfield. They're good at, I think, Durkin in particular, Critchley gave a lot of flowers to for his work defensively, coming back and helping the back line, even though he was a midfielder. I thought Durkin's positioning in this match was a really good staying within himself. He didn't press too high too often. He didn't get out of his positioning, out of his spacing. He stayed. He was comfortable, and he stayed where he needed to be, where his assignments were. And so I was pretty impressed with Durkin's overall positioning. Padelford had some good long throws that were fun to see. Leuven, obviously, with his free kicks, fouls drawn. You had Hartl with his goal, Klaus, Vollum. I mean, who else? Is it McSorley and then the cast and crew, or besides Berkey?
Well, yeah, I was gonna say Berkey.
Yeah, there you go.
Those saves were crucial, and all McSorley with that save on the goal line was amazing. But yeah, Dorkin, and what Dorkin did today was needed because you have a very talented San Jose offensively. So Dorkin is staying back and not going on the runs and as he usually does when the team is attacking. It was important for him to stay back and support the center backs. And when we were talking about the possible lineup, I know you wanted to have Dorkin as center back, but what I said was like Dorkin and Leuven are working so well, so why mess with that,
Really calling me out here, Santi, on that one. It's a consensus projected lineup to keep hidden some of those decisions that don't pan out.
Oh, I'm sorry, my bad.
No, but I was pretty honest about that. That I even put that out there that Critchley ran out Durkin and Baumgartel last time against San Jose. So would he be willing to do that in this case, especially with Kessler and Fall out? I'm glad he didn't. I would have liked to see Michael Wenzel, but I'm happy with Kyle Hiebert's performance. I've always been happy with Kyle Hiebert's performance at center back. I don't think I've ever really had many qualms with his position, with his play at center back. And his 15 match start streak to start this year, it was a bit of a shock to see him dropped so heavily from the lineup. So I'm happy for Kyle Hiebert to have this opportunity and to be a part of this big win where you didn't allow a single goal in the run of play. And that's kind of the next thing is San Jose had some insane expected goals in this one. Most of them came in the second half. And depending on where you look at your stats, like MLS had 4.8, FOTMob, I'm looking now 3.23. but we know that 0.79 was on Chicho Arango's PK. And so this is still a massive amount of XG. Most of it, coming in the second half. I think all but maybe 1.5 was in the second half. So this was a huge performance against, but St. Louis held. That's why it's good. It's not good that we allowed that much XG. It's good that we held. 0 goals allowed in the run of play. It's the second straight game. It's becoming more regular for Critchley where you can point to that. I think even against FC Dallas, you had that the one goal that was kind of off of a set piece. It was off of a throw in that it really happened where we turned the ball over. So you're getting these moments shored up. And you're looking at more of a trend where Critchley's teams are pulling off that balance, where they're scoring a little bit as they need to, and they're having these much better defensive performances than they were in the first 5 to 10 games under his leadership. And that shows growth to me. That's why this is important to track, because it does show growth on both sides of the ball. Because the scoring aspect obviously gets the praise, that gets the highlights, that gets a lot of the eyes and visibility, but the defensive work is just as important. You can't have one without the other and be a successful team in MLS. San Jose is proving that, how many times did you see on the broadcast? We talked about it on our show last week that San Jose leads Major League Soccer in XG. They're right up there in goals scored at the very top, but they're such a bad defensive team. They have a 0 goal differential. Now they have a negative goal differential. And that's why they're such a high scoring, prolific attacking team, but they're just so porous when it comes to the defense. And that's where St. Louis took advantage of them. They held when they needed to in the second half defensively after coming out really, really strong on fire in the first half. The balance of that, where I said last week, my key to the game was scoring first. And I knew it was a cliched comment at the time, but I still stand by it because of this reason. St. Louis put 2 out in front of San Jose, and they were even able to withstand a penalty, allowing 1 goal, and they were able to come back, recreate the 2-goal lead, and stay and stand and keep and hold the line. And by doing that, St. Louis is building off of previous performances, and they're showing that they're capable of managing a game appropriately. They're capable of withstanding that onslaught by the most prolific attacking team in Major League Soccer. That is something that, that's probably the biggest takeaway. And I'm proud of the work that St. Louis put into that defensively in the second half. It was touch and go at times. San Jose definitely had their moments. The XG points to it. And Berkey had to be standing on his head for a lot of the match because of that. He had some amazing saves. But at the end of the day, they did what they needed to do. And we haven't been able to say that too many times this year about St. Louis.
No, it was a good performance. And yeah, your comment about scoring first, and not only scoring the first, but maintaining that lead, something that has been a problem before. So a lot of positives on the defense. Again, allowing goals after the 75th minute had been an issue too, and the last 2 games that hasn't happened. And just holding the opponent, because if you go back a few weeks ago, 3 games the team lost by a score of 3-2, and it was like mistakes or goals allowed late, games you couldn't hold the lead for more than 5 minutes. So it's good that slowly you're cleaning that up, and hopefully the team can build from this into 2026, or who knows if the stars will continue aligning, although Houston and Dallas won today. So that makes the margins
Razor thin.
razor thin. But if the team continues building and maybe a good result like against LAFC, and things continue going up. But yeah, the defense has definitely gotten a lot better, and a lot of those mistakes have been cleaned up.
Talking about trends for St. Louis coming into this match, by winning this match, since the Aston Villa game, the friendly that we had, City has scored at least 2 goals in 5 of those 6 matches. They'd only done that 8 total times in the 25 matches prior, scoring 2 goals. So from an attacking perspective, whether it's coming out early or late, St. Louis has absolutely shifted gears from David Critchley in what he has brought to this team. So the consistency is there. Here in the last 3 games, I think we're starting to see consistency defensively. So we need some more sample sizes to build on that, where you're allowing 1 goal to FC Dallas, a clean sheet against Montreal, and allowing 1 goal against San Jose. So 2 goals allowed in 3 games. That's, I think, something that David Critchley has been yearning for as city manager, because he very intentionally corrected the attack before focusing on the defense. Also noteworthy that, like I mentioned earlier, we are now 6-0-0 all time against San Jose, and David Critchley is now 2-0 all time against Bruce Arena. So
Wow.
you take your wins where you can get them, and these are fun little things that get pointed out. But San Jose, they're a team that for some reason we always just seem to have the advantage on, and pick them at the right time and have the right approach to take them on. And we make tactical decisions like Brendan McSorley. The entire reason that he started, that David Critchley talked about, it wasn't necessarily that he'd been training well, though that was a reason for that. But David Critchley said he knew there'd be moments for transition where we'd need pace up top. He talked about San Jose playing an expansive back three, and that they were more than able to be exploited to concede goals. And Critchley said that Brendan's good with those actions in the phases of the game. It was mainly a tactical decision to go with Brendan McSorley in this match, which, circling back to the starting 11, that with Kyle Hebert, I think, was the only other biggest question, and tactical in nature. So the conversation right now, when you look at Brendan McSorley, you look at Simon Betcher as possibly that similar type of a player, where you don't expect a speedy winger like a Salio. You don't expect a possession type player through the midfield like Tomas Ostrak. So the conversation to me now, and I think I saw this in the chat, and forgive me for not crediting you, but I think Brendan McSorley may have jumped Simon Betcher in the depth chart.
Possibly, yeah. Like he took his chance and scored, and he had a good game.
Yeah.
So I would say yes.
Microgirl17 credit. I found it. Thank you so much for that. And I wouldn't disagree. Not just because McSorley's performance tonight, but when's the last time that we saw Betcher start and perform in a really quality game? I think he started against FC Dallas, if memory serves. Yeah, he started against FC Dallas. Yeah, that's correct. But that was a 1-1 draw when we were up 10 up a man. So I wouldn't say that earned him a job, and it clearly hasn't. So we continue to see what we can get from Simon Betcher, while a guy like Brendan McSorley storms onto the scene like this. Part of it, to me, Santi, may have to do with, and I don't think whether this is fair or not, this is just part of the narrative that David Critchley came from City 2 earlier this year. So does David Critchley have more of this soft spot in his heart maybe for developing some of the players from City 2? Does he feel more comfortable with using them, knowing that he's seen them and experienced what they have to offer, and he wants to be that player who continues to develop the younger guys through the organization, as he himself has come up through the organization from the academy to City 2, now to City. I'm not saying that he's playing favorites by any means, because I think he has his requirements, those 3 things that he's always talked about, or that he's been talking about rather, the performed well in the previous game, training hard always, and does it make sense tactically? And if you have 2 players who that could fit the bill for similarly, Betcher and McSorley, it just seems like at this point in time after this match, and it's easy to say because he had such a magnificent performance, that McSorley is at that point. But I want to look at the other side of the field for a second, because there aren't too many bad things that I would really point to in this game. Individually, the only really unfortunate moment that happened that we were dinged on was Salio's foul in the box. And then the fact that he was taken out at halftime. What did you make of Salio being subbed out at halftime?
Was it because of the foul? I don't know. But yeah, I was surprised. I was surprised with that early substitution. But at that point, and when you go back and think about the City 2 guys, Critchley has said, no, I always want to put the best lineup. I want to finish the season on a high note, but at the same time, I'm going to find opportunities for some of these younger players, and could have been just that. Like, okay, we're up 3-1. Maybe it's a good opportunity for Mackay Joyner to to go in the game. But I wouldn't make much of that substitution. I think it was more like, yeah, up 3-1, and let's give Mackay Joyner a chance.
That's fair. I would kind of agree with that. I'm not going to read too much into Salio coming out at that point. Hopefully he doesn't have an injury or anything. We didn't get to address that or really ask about that during the post-game presser. We'll find out more about that this week. I can promise you that. But I'm not reading too much into that either at this time. And it did give an opportunity for Mackay Joyner, who, has that left mid role, and we do want to see more Mackay. So there's only so many positions you can really go with here. Robert Clare in the chat, really quick for those who are listening. McSorley has also been playing a wide attacking mid at City 2, whereas Betcher is really a number 9 and has struggled in that right attacking mid role. And he's spot on with that. Betcher, when under David Critchley, because Critchley has loved his 4-2-3-1 approach, Betcher has played more of a right mid role. He has played as a second striker. Maybe I think it was that FC Dallas match where Critchley actually referenced playing 2 strikers. And so that gets Betcher higher up in the field where he's used to. But in general, with this 4-2-3-1, where McSorley was playing underneath Klaus, kind of cutting in underneath him and trying to just play off of Klaus on that right side, that's not Betcher's specialty. So I think that plays into it as much as anything when you're looking tactically and what you need from that right mid role as opposed to a second striker where Betcher is more comfortable. So that makes sense. Thank you for pointing that out.
I do want to see the passing network when it is available, because I think at times, since Klaus was also moving a lot, at times McSorley looked like the number 9, at least his positioning, especially like on the goals. He was right there in the box, and at times that's where he was moving. So yeah, I know he was a right winger, but a lot of times he was moving into that number 9 role.
Oh, Santi, you ask and you shall receive. If you are watching the live stream, hopefully you see this. If you're not, we will describe it to you. Our passing network looks like we are afraid of the right side of the field. It is massively skewed to the left, where you have Devin Padelford at about a midfield role. You have the left winger, which is either Salio or Mackay Joyner, depending on the half. And this covers the entire game. Yeah, but you have what looks to be Klaus and Hartl skewed towards the left side. Yeah. And then you have McSorley and Vollum off by themselves on the right. And this is average positioning. So this also played into some of the subs in the second half, but more often than not, the Cities in the passing network specifically, they were building and passing on that left, and they were exploiting it and leveraging it. Hartl was building over there. I think a lot of this too is the midfielders, where you had Durkin and Leuven shading over to that side, and that helped to kind of direct everything over to that side of the field. So it makes sense to me to see that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was expecting to see McSorley closer to the middle, but yeah, the fact that there was not much going on the right side, I think that tells the story too.
Yeah, and you had Brendan McSorley with the highest G+ ratings, which probably because he scored his goals that he was there. But also Timo Baumgartel.
Goal line clearance.
The goal line clearance. Yes. Yeah. The defensive work. Absolutely. So, the underlying stats, the advanced metrics show that Brendan McSorley was the player of the match as well, the man of the match. Other great performances that by the G+ ratings, the goals added rather, Timo Baumgartel, Klaus, Conrad Vollum, Mackay Joyner, Devin Padelford, really good performances there. You do have the man who we just talked about, probably because of his defensive, his penalty. The penalty committed dropped him down, and he didn't otherwise do a whole lot of noteworthy work. I haven't looked at his stats to see how many touches or passes he had, but that was the thing that really everybody remembers from this game from Salio, at least on that front. While we're looking at some of these stats, I do want to look at the field tilt. Field tilt, San Jose won the overall field tilt 68% to 32%. And I will 100% attribute this field tilt to the second half. The stats that I have looking at each half show St. Louis with slim margins of lead as far as passes in the opposition half, passes in the final third, and touches in the opposition box. St. Louis led in all 3 of those categories with a 52 to 48 overall possession numbers in the first half. San Jose wins the field tilt because they had significant, I mean, significant number advantages in the second half. With this 68% overall in the second half, San Jose had 156 to 30 passes in the opposition half, 99 to 22 passes in the final third, and 27 to 9 touches in the opposition box, all just decimating St. Louis as far as the numbers go. So field tilt, and this is the tale of two halves where Critchley's team, they did what they needed to in dominating field tilt in the first half to get a 2-goal lead going into halftime. And then they withstood everything. They managed the game. They understood. Critchley even said post-game, they understood that San Jose would be coming out with momentum, trying to chase those goals. And this was a game state situation where you win the field tilt when everything is even and you have the opportunity and things are a little more even keeled and we're just playing 0-0. And then when you get this lead, field tilt changes because the game state changes and the opposition is trying to be a little more on their front foot, chasing something. So this makes sense because of how the halves played out. And then the last stat, Santi, the average height of defensive actions. Both teams were pretty even on this one. It didn't seem like a ton of high pressing was going on overall. You can see some of the challenges and defensive work that were happening on the wings in the attacking ends of both sides. But for the most part, this was I would say a mid block game that had some different ranges from both teams. All right.
Yeah.
Santi. No, you're good. I was not expecting to share that screen, but we will. Let's jump into the first half. Let's talk about some of these goals. Sound good?
Let's do it.
First half, let's get into it with the 10-minute goal. You know, there wasn't a whole lot that happened before that, rather, but it was a deep cross from Chris Durkin, the first of a couple deep crosses from Durkin to Klaus. Klaus held it up a little bit, and then Brendan McSorley made himself known running between two defenders as Klaus played the ball. To me, this was a perfect pass from Durkin and from Klaus to be where to get the ball to McSorley where he needed to be. McSorley's first MLS goal, yeah, but it was also not the first progressive cross and switch that City had made. This seemed like something that they were tactically targeting, where they were creating those overloads on the left, mostly from Leuven and Durkin and their other left-sided players. But they were using that advantage to then draw San Jose, switch the ball over, and then use some 1v1 scenarios to create some space. And it worked really well for this first McSorley goal.
Yeah, and McSorley made a great move and a great finish. That had to be huge for him, and I'm glad he had the confidence to finish that play and score his first MLS goal, and he kept going from there, having a great night. In the second half, I think he could have scored a hat trick, but I think there were a couple of times where I don't know if they didn't see him or a different decision was made, but he was open a couple of times. He could have scored a hat trick on the second half.
Shades of Jean da Silva, do I sense?
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Not being able to find Brendan McSorley.
Yeah.
After that, we stayed on the offensive. This was another positive thing right after the goal is it's not just that we didn't concede, but we stayed on the offensive. We continued to press the ball and we continued to use that advantage into the attacking half, into the final third, where just 9 minutes later, it was Marcel Hartl who scored from Chris Durkin and Brendan McSorley. This was a ball that I think was played into the final third a couple times, and St. Louis just did a really good job of keeping the ball in the final third. This is where Durkin in the midfield really came in handy. He had that kind of crazy, found the ball out of nowhere as the ball was coming from the sky and just fell to him, and he turned around facing Berkey and kicked the ball back into the attacking third. And when he did that, it landed pretty close to, I think, Brendan McSorley's chest. McSorley just barely knocked it down, kept it in that end for Marcel Hartl, who gathered it. And I thought Hartl was going to either pass the ball off or try to go 1v1 around the defender. Instead, he just shot the ball, turned almost like a half volley with his left foot, and he scored a worldie. This should be MLS goal of the match day, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was. I wasn't expecting that shot either, but yeah, I don't know if he already had it in his mind and he had seen Daniel wasn't positioned great and he just went for it, and I think he surprised everybody.
Had some other moments after that. 22, there was a near own goal by Timo. Would have been, I think, the big mistake that we made in that half, but thankfully it was cleared out. You had Brendan McSorley continuing to have good opportunities at 27. He had a good opportunity, a quality shot going direct to goal from a Klaus pass where Klaus was wide right. So this is where McSorley kind of cut in a little bit. And this is where I really noticed that McSorley was doing a really good job of playing off of Klaus, occupying some of those spaces high up on the field that Klaus was vacating. So Klaus did a lot of work on the left, shading to that left channel. But when Klaus came right, McSorley was not unlike what Conrad Vollum did last week. McSorley was willing to take that space inside wherever it was given. But then at 29 minutes, things started to get a little dicey. You had Salio commit that penalty on Chicho Arango. San Jose was progressing on their right. Devin Padelford stepped up to the ball carrier, and I was good. I was all ready to say, "Oh, that's a fantastic play by Salio," because he continued his stride. He continued following the player who did the overlapping run. It ended up being Chicho Arango, and Padelford stepped up, so Salio covered the space in the penalty area. And unfortunately, Salio just got a little too aggressive, stuck his foot where it didn't belong, in between the player's legs. Had a little bit of contact, it seemed, but they didn't show a whole lot of replays on that. But they did say that they confirmed it. And so I think the contact was seen, whether it was a lot of contact or not. Any contact, Arango went down. You really don't have anything but a penalty that can be called on that, and then Arango buries it. So
Yeah,
were you so obviously, you're upset by the foul, but was this a penalty from your opinion?
it was a very soft penalty, but yeah, there was contact. There was contact, and Chicharango did a good job selling it.
He did. He
Yeah,
did a great job selling it.
the referee was very close, and they reviewed it, and they didn't see that there was a clear mistake, so it stayed, and he was close. But yeah, I think there was a slight contact, and then Chicharango did a good job selling it.
Yeah, and then there was a back and forth, 40 minutes. Leuven had a good foul drawn on Arango, but it didn't really lead into much. Berkey had a good clearance at 43 where he came out to midfield. But then 45, right before stoppage, right before halftime, Brendan McSorley put his exclamation mark on this game from Marcel Hartl and Conrad Vollum, where Vollum, I think in the replay of this goal, you have to give credit to what Conrad Vollum was doing, going 1v1 with the defender out wide in all the space in the world. Nobody else was near them. Vollum took like 10 seconds of trying to figure out what to do with the ball. And I want to reinforce just what this can do to the mentality of a player in the moment, because it's not necessarily like tricking them on where the ball is or anything, but it's almost lulling players into ball watching, where Vollum was doing so much work. They were expecting him to do something, and then he just more or less dumped it off to Marcel Hartl, who then himself got that quick cross in to Brendan McSorley. And that's what allowed the goal to happen. Brendan McSorley had a perfectly timed run in the box to finish it, but the work that Vollum did to, what I say, lull the defense into ball watching, that time period where he's trying to go 1v1, coupled with the very, very short amount of time that Marcel Hartl had the ball, I think that worked incredibly well to our advantage. And then obviously the perfect placement and timing between Hartl and McSorley capped that one off.
Yeah, and McSorley doing everything right, and when the cross went, I thought, oh, he's like between two players, and one of them was Mark Anthony Kay, who is tall. I was like, I don't think he's gonna get it, but he made a good move and was able to snatch that goal. He was on fire tonight.
Absolutely. 2 goals, 1 assist going into the half. Marcel Hartl had 1 goal, 1 assist. Chris Durkin had 2 assists. Klaus and Vollum each had an assist. I called it a full team performance. Quality runs off the ball, great timing in the final third, a strong ability to keep the ball into the final third, to extend possessions, extend plays that then paid dividends. And that one mistake on defense. Couple close calls, but City was obviously the team in control of the first half. And the stat they showed at halftime was that Brendan McSorley, while he didn't have that many touches on the ball, he had 3.5 miles run in the first half. They highlighted his heat map, which was just all over the place. And when I asked him post game about the few amount of touches he had, because later in the second half, they showed a stat on the screen, and it was at 74 minutes, McSorley only had 19 touches. By the end of the game, I think he had 22 total touches. And I asked McSorley about that at the end of the game, and he said he's kind of the guy who's just always trying to move forward. Part of his game that's part of his game that's gotten him this far. He said I could play a back pass, but I don't really enjoy doing that. He said he just wanted to be that player who pressed forward, and that lent itself really well to St. Louis in the first half, where they were obviously the aggressors and they had the ball, they had the movement going into the final third. The field tilt battle was won. It really played itself well when they needed that in that moment. Once they were in the second half, I think his play kind of fell off, and he was, like a lot of the other players, more defensive minded, defensive oriented based on what San Jose was giving them. But I think that kind of speaks to I hesitate to say ineffectiveness of McSorley in the second half, but that's kind of what it is. St. Louis wasn't pressing forward, seeking goals in general. And so McSorley's, his style of play, his strengths, they weren't being exploited because of the game state. I think that's my takeaway from McSorley in the second half. But in general, McSorley made every single one of his touches count.
Yeah, and I remember seeing that same stat, 19 touches, like, oh my God, 19 touches, and he was in the 3 goals, scored 2, 1 assist, like what a night for him, so efficient. But yeah, he took the opportunity he had, he made the best out of it, and hopefully he will continue developing from here.
And the second half didn't really have a whole lot of highlights. It was mostly defensive saves. You had some excitement, a lot of excitement in those instances. Berkey really shined in the second half. Berkey had as good as McSorley. I mean, you could give player of the halves, and I wouldn't be too disappointed. You could say Brendan McSorley was the man of the first half, and Roman Berkey was the man of the second half, because that's how the game state necessitated it, and they did what they needed to do in these game modes. Berkey kept us in there a lot. Heck, McSorley kept us in there 61 minutes. That's the biggest thing for me. I said in my notes, somehow San Jose didn't score. It's like in Star Wars, somehow Palpatine returned. And we don't know how it happened until we look at the replay on this one, at least. Then we find out it's Brendan McSorley, who's preventing San Jose from scoring in this instance, clearing a goal from the goal line while Berkey was occupied and everybody else was on the ball. Brendan McSorley in that perfect spot. Now, it's not the first time that we've seen a City player do this, but it might be the first time we've seen a City forward doing this, which credit to Brendan McSorley for doing the dirty work, being where he needs to be. This is another highlight for him. And he told me post-game he doesn't think he's ever had a goal line save like this before.
That's crazy. But everything was going right for him.
Everything was going right for him. And that seemed like one of those games where you're just feeling it. It's like NBA Jam, where you're on fire and you just can't miss from this one. That was Brendan McSorley to a T in this game. So second half progresses. San Jose is obviously winning the field tilt. That was pretty obvious in the first 10 to 15 minutes. They were just on the offensive. It felt up until that moment of Brendan McSorley's clearance where it just seemed inevitable to me, where San Jose was going to score. And that's partial PTSD from all these other games where we have allowed so many second half goals. We've allowed goals after the 70, 75th, 80th minute, and it has been pouring buckets of these goals allowed. So we get into these moments where you're 70, 75, 80 minutes in, and you have Roman Berkey standing on his head in these moments to keep us in, because San Jose got off a lot of quality shots. A lot of their XG came towards the end of this match, and in a match where otherwise St. Louis would have allowed these goals. That's what we have been doing this season. 80 minutes, Roman Berkey had just a massive save from San Jose in transition. 87 minutes, Berkey had 2 more saves, one of those diving to his right. When all is said and done, Berkey had 9 saves, and 6 of them were diving saves. Just a fantastic performance from Berkey, as well as our defenders, because Timo Baumgartel and Kyle Hebert played great as well. Timo Baumgartel had 12 defensive contributions, 9 clearances, 2 assists, and a block. Kyle Hebert had just under that as far as the stats go, but they played off each other really well. And I was not upset either by the defensive work that our fullbacks did. Thought Padelford did just fine, in this, especially, and I'm talking in the second half where they were mostly needed to have these performances. And even Conrad Balam, I thought he did what he needed to do. And when you're a fullback in that role, and your team is on the defensive and they're on their back heel, and you're obviously being bombarded with shots and everything, I would honestly say the less we hear about our fullbacks in those instances, the better off we are, because they're just going about their job. They're doing what they need to do, and they're not making themselves known on the field. Because if you're a fullback and you're in that game state and you're making yourself known, it's
Mm,
probably not for a good reason.
yeah, probably not for the right reason, but yeah, Conrad Volume, he kept settling into that right fullback position. He keeps getting better, and I think defensively he's getting better too. Now the team is gonna have to make a decision on him, knowing it has that purchase option.
Well, and on the Berkey front, slippery snake in the chat. It seems related Berkey is going to have to buy into round 2 of the project. Spending money will be critical to rebuild. Well, that's part of what this is Roman Berkey has to have these kinds of matches, not just for him personally, but he has to see the fight and the determination and the ability to close out matches from his teammates. He has to trust and believe that he's on a team that is capable of that, has the determination, has the fire, and has the proven results to do that. It's not just believing what Diego says, believing what Hack says in their commitment to the organization. He's got to feel it from his teammates, right? He has to see the proof, the results. It's a results-driven industry, and he has to see that. And I think that's also kind of a sub-story to all this, where you've got Roman Berkey in particular as that one player who this is basically his choice whether to come back or not. We know the contract negotiations are happening. So for Roman Berkey, it's the last handful of games this season. If they go extremely poorly, like if we had lost these last 2 games
Oof.
and
Yeah.
we continue to lose and we are in a legitimate battle for the wooden spoon against the LA Galaxy, and that's how we finish the season, that is a completely different viewpoint for Roman Berkey as far as whether he wants to stay or not than drawing FC Dallas, winning 2 away, and then whatever the narrative is the rest of the season. That honestly, if you're looking for a reason for us to want to watch these games, to win, to see City succeed, it might have something to do with Roman Berkey and his desire to come back. He needs to see that kind of progress and that kind of momentum of sorts to have faith that round 2 of this project is worth sticking around for.
Yeah, big decision for Berkey, and yeah, hopefully these last few games and the next 3, which are against teams that are in playoffs or in that zone of 9 plays, the team will continue showing progress and convince him there is enough talent, and hopefully with the new sporting director, depending on what happens with the coach, he has to be convinced of St. Louis having a good project for the next 2-3 years. But hopefully these last performances will steer him that way.
Absolutely. On the player front, we mentioned Brendan McSorley. Obviously, we mentioned Roman Berkey. Marcel Hartl led the team in expected assists. Chris Durkin had his 2 hockey assists, but that wasn't counted on FOTMob yet because they go old school with just the 1 assist. They don't like the US rules of what MLS has to offer. So where do we go next? Santi, do we have any other final thoughts on this particular game?
No, I think that covers it. Just big test, and yeah, I know we're gonna talk about what happened and who won and how narrow the chances are getting, but let's do it.
Yeah, so for us on the St. Louis side, we play LAFC next week at home. It's a big battle. I don't even know how else to word it other. It's a big South Korean battle. Songbin Jong facing the player. He's facing the player that he's publicly stated he admires the most in Son Heung-min. This LAFC team is no joke. Between Son and Denny Bowanga, they are tough. And there was questioning in the chat about, do we think they're going to rest their players since they've clinched a playoff spot? And they are 10 points out of the top rated team in the West. That'd be San Diego right now, but they are also 2 points away from Seattle in 5th place. And so we're talking top 4. That's what LAFC is fighting for right now. They're fighting for home field advantage in the playoffs. So no, I don't see, regardless of what their result is against RSL on Sunday night, I don't see LAFC sitting their stars. I see them coming full strength because they need to separate themselves more from the Seattle and Portland and Austins of the world, who are just a few points below them and in striking range. LAFC has 47 points right now before their match on Sunday. Seattle has 45, Portland has 42, Austin 41. They're still in striking range with 4 games left to go. So no, that for those teams in particular, LAFC has only 28 games played right now as of the time of recording. So they have 6 games left. Yep. I think plenty of games. Seattle has 5 games left. Portland has 4. Austin has 5. So these teams have a host of games. Anything could happen. LAFC is going to probably bring their A game unless they're otherwise injured. And then that brings us to Sunday night, where RSL, if they're able to defeat LAFC, they would eliminate us from the playoffs officially. So this time next week, even for our Thursday show, we'll have a lot more clarity on what we have at stake going into next weekend. And like I said, there are still not standing reasons, but there are plenty of reasons to want St. Louis to succeed that will impact next season. Roman Berkey probably being the keyest of those, but lots of other reasons as well in what we will have available to us quality-wise next season. So
yeah, I really hope LAFC does their thing tomorrow and beats Real Salt Lake again.
Yes.
And keeps City's season alive. I think just the environment for the match will be different if City is already eliminated, and I want to see a team that has won back-to-back games going at it against a talented team like LAFC.
Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. And I think we'll call it there, Santi. Thank you so much for joining us on this late, but still Sunday morning. We're still doing this on a Sunday morning.
There you go.
Edition of Flyover Fallout, looking and celebrating the 3-1 win, the back-to-back away wins, first time for David Critchley, his second win against Bruce Arena, St. Louis's third match in a row, picking up at least a point, and yada, yada, yada. So thank you so much for joining us on Flyover Footy. My name is Matt Baker for Santiago Beltran. We appreciate you if you stayed up with us. We appreciate you if you downloaded us later on, and we'll talk to you later. We'll be back at least on Thursday for our preview of LAFC, and we'll have much more info during the week from press conferences, trainings, words from the coach, news updates, and all that good stuff. So thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you later.
Vamos, City.
And for everybody with us on the live stream right now, you guys are heroes. It is 1:15, 1:16 in the morning, and we're still talking about City. 2-3 weeks ago, we would have never thought anybody should be doing that in their right mind, but that's how quickly some things change, and that's what a win does. So thank you so much for sticking around with us. Really appreciate it. Thank you for all the questions, all the chats. I'm reading every single one of them, and we really appreciate it. So get some sleep. Don't wake up in the morning early for us. If you have to wake up early for something else, that's fine. Do what you need to do, but have a great rest of the weekend, and we'll talk to y'all later.